Segment 2, Gold and Black Live. Brian Neubert stays with us, and we are talking with Kyle Neddenriep, and we're going to make this interview is going to come off perfectly this week, and we're glad to do that. Kyle needs no introduction. We won't share all the machinations we've been through over the last couple of weeks. It's all good. And
My fault.
Kyle with the Indianapolis Star, and needs no introduction if you're talking about preps basketball, football, and it certainly pertains to college basketball and college football recruiting as well as what we deal with. But Kyle, welcome to the show. And I know you're staying warm in Indianapolis, but glad to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Hopefully we can get this to work. It was my end on last week for sure, but glad you guys.
Yeah, but we return the favor. That's why we're equal opportunity from that standpoint. Obviously, and Brian, I'll let Brian interject in because you guys know a heck of a lot more about this than I do. But Caleb Furst and Trey Kaufman are two names that will be fixtures in West Lafayette starting next year. Guys that you've seen play, as Brian has, almost to the point of ad nauseum. You've seen him play a lot, but these are guys that are going to make an impact at Purdue. Is that a big impact at Purdue? Is that your evaluation as well?
Oh yeah. I think there's little doubt. You know, when you watch these guys play, kind of what they both bring to the table, and you know, and when we talked a little bit about Caleb before, was his ability to run the floor, how hard he plays. That made an impression on me the very first time I watched him play. I think he was going into his sophomore season in the summer that year, and just it was kind of like remember watching Cody Zeller back when he was in high school, and just how hard he worked as a big man. And, he really kind of popped off that way. And then everything he does now, got a chance to see him play on Saturday again. Great passer as well. That Fort Wayne Blackhawk Christian team, they have a lot of 3-point shooters around the perimeter, and he finds them, and he does it. I think he had 8 or 9 assists on Saturday when they played Silver Creek. So that kind of shows you he's not a black hole. Once he gets the ball, no matter where he's at, and he can dribble the ball, but he's going to get it to the right person. He's very efficient that way. And, he can, I think he's probably more athletic than people give him credit for. He can finish around the basket and ever improving his shot as well. And that they do a lot of that at Blackhawk Christian is really work on shooting and, skill development. And I think he's really improved in that area. And then when you talk about Trey Kaufman, we were talking before we started recording, and Brian was talking about how well he played in the Battle of the Brands. And I think that, if he would have had a full summer to play in AAU, and I thought this watching him play at Grand Park this summer was, how many coaches would be sitting around here watching him. I think he would have blown up and had all kinds of, and he had a lot of offers anyway, but I think it really would have blown up if it was in normal circumstances. But, I thought he looked great this summer. Of course, he's coming off a little bit of an injury and potentially could play tonight, he said. So looking forward to seeing him back on the court in high school. But Trey, great job. He can really step out and shoot and add something different to what First has. But I think those two will play really well together. And I think a lot of Purdue fans are obviously hoping for that. But I think it really is realistic that those two could be a really good combination for Purdue.
Kyle, one of the interesting parts of our silly jobs is that, we interact with these young people, get a pretty good idea what they're all about. Furst and Kaufman both seem like kind of adults in the room, I guess I'm making a statement more than asking a question, but would you agree with me in the sense that, your interactions with them suggest that they're both pretty mature and level-headed, functional human beings?
Definitely. And Caleb, I know we had a chance to talk to him. I think it was just the two of us a couple of weeks ago at Brownsburg. And, again, very, he answers the questions thoughtfully, I think. And, I think he's very easy to talk to that way. And again, I remember talking to him at the top 100 workout at Ben Davis. I'm pretty sure it was going into his sophomore year, if I remember right. But that was my first interaction with him, and just kind of sat down there on the bench and had a great one-on-one just conversation with him. And not all I know I couldn't have been that way at 15 years old or whatever he was at that time. So
no
I always I can appreciate how he interacts with us and allows us to do our jobs more easily. And then Trey, I think he's super, thoughtful. There's probably a better word than that for it, but he's very smart, and I think he legitimately, and if you ask him a question, he doesn't quite understand, what you're asking him. He'll kind of ask you what you mean, and I find that makes him unique that way, and he's just very thoughtful in his answers. He expands on his answers, to where I remember listening to. I can't remember if you were there or not, but I talked to him this summer up at Grant Park at the Pacer Athletic Center, and he went on probably about 12 or 15-minute conversation. There's a couple of us there, and I went back and listened to it, and I was like, man, this is a really good interview, and he's just really thoughtful in everything that he answers.
Purdue obviously has a commitment in the following year with Fletcher Loyer, and I don't know whether you've had a chance or how much you've had a chance to see him, but your impressions of him as well, in terms of, basketball is all about fits, and about what Matt Painter brings looks for in kids, but what do you see in him?
Well, I only had a chance to see him the one time at Brownsburg, and he had a good game, and you could see. And then the following week, kind of following up, I think he had 31 and 20 something, and so clearly he's fitting in real well with Homestead and Luke Goody, the commitment from Illinois. Those two are I think they're going to be one of the best teams in the state this year. Fletcher's one of those he's kind of like Goody, and he's only a junior, but you can already see how well he understands the game. He's a coach's son, I know, so that's always something that you feel like those guys probably have a step ahead in some ways just because they understand the game so well. But he's real good shooter, playmaker. And he'll be a great fit. I can't wait to see him again this year, and then as he gets stronger physically, kind of see what he looks like next year, because Goody's that way too. Goody had more of a body kind of probably similar to Fletcher, and now you can see Goody's put on some weight, some muscle, and he's having an easier time getting to the basket, and that's probably what the future holds for Loyer as well. But yeah, from a high school basketball perspective, those two are dynamite. That's going to be awfully fun to see, what they can do this year. They're already highly ranked now, but I think looking forward, them potentially playing somebody like Carmel in the tournament is going to be a lot of fun.
Kyle, as you might imagine, Purdue fans smell blood on Mr. Basketball. You've got two pretty good candidates at both ends of the state. Just kind of break down the field for us real quick, if you could. I know that's not a question you get asked very often, so I don't know if you've put any thought about it, but what do you think?
Well, we just released Mr. Football this morning, so I'm moving on, I guess, now to Mr. Basketball. So, Trey Kaufman and Caleb First, I think, are probably 1A and 1B. I might give Kaufman a slight edge based off of, I think it probably helps winning the Gatorade Player of the Year last year, just from a name recognition standpoint. But I think people know who First is too, so I don't know that is the deciding factor or anything. But I think both of them have won state championships, and I think that's important because when people vote for this, you may not always see a guy, and you're a little part of the state, you may not see a guy play at all in person. But if you make it to the state championship game, which both those guys have done, it automatically, and we've seen it throughout the years, that automatically boosts your vote totals. People know who you are. Have a lot of people media who come to Banker's Life get to see you for the first time, and that matters. So I think that helps. Beyond, I think probably even beyond where they're going to college. And I know people always think that's the deciding factor. I don't necessarily feel that's true, but I understand that perception. But so I think those two are probably 1A, 1B in my estimation. And I talked about Luke Goody. I think he could make his way into the discussion for sure. And you wonder too, and I think Pierce Thomas from Brownsburg, and based on what they do, he missed the first game of the season, first 2 games of the season due to a contact tracing situation, but. He's going to Butler, just a sensational athlete, and a guy who I think is going to shoot more, so he's going to score, put more points on the board this year, and he's super efficient as well, and a good passer. I think he averaged like 6.5 assists last year, so I think he's a name too to keep an eye on in that race. But I would probably, if you're, putting it on, looking at where they're at right now, kind of going into the holiday week, and Coffin hasn't played a game yet either. So obviously he needs to get out there and put up some good numbers as we move forward. But I would, and he will. there's no question he will. But I would say Kaufman in first would probably be at the top of that list, and then I think Goody and Thomas would be probably right there next in line.
Yeah, a lot of talent in this state, and interesting as that continues to evolve. David Bell obviously was switched to football a little bit, and his not only you obviously got a chance to see him play basketball and football in the city of Indianapolis, and the talent of the city of Indianapolis has been amazing. But David, tell us about just your thoughts of him and how much he's evolved as a college football player to an all Big Ten level, and really probably may have been an All-American level had Purdue had a better season. But to talk about your memories of him and that you're probably not all that surprised about how well he's done at Purdue.
No, not at all. Not at all. He's one of a kind, as an athlete, as a person. There's few people I've more enjoyed covering than David. He's so laid back, and his laid back style, sort of off the floor, runs counter to I think what is within him, and there's such a fire to compete and kick your butt. It kind of belies what you see on the surface with him at times, but. He was always so funny because he would rarely, he would always kind of, answer on social media when I would post something, but never about football. It was more about basketball. And, I think that kind of showed the competitive side of him. And, you always knew football was his future, but, on the basketball side, I remember there was one, they were playing in the regional in 2018. That was a team that ended up, going on and winning state, beat Romeo Langford. And, and David made that shot to beat, that was probably one of my favorite memories ever. Not only of David, but ever covering anything, was him making that shot in front of a packed house at Seymour. And what that scene was like was just unreal. But you knew he was going to be the one to make the shot. But the week before that, they're playing in the regional, and they win the opening game. And then they play Terre Haute South in the night game. And in between games, I posted a story and a tweet saying this Terre Haute South team, it's going to be closer than people expect. It's going to be, people don't understand how good Terre Haute South is. And, so it's about 92 to 40 something. And David's out of the game. And all of a sudden I hear, Kyle. And I look down, and David is sitting there on the bench pointing up at the scoreboard. So that was one of my, and I just said, I pointed out to the floor and told him to pay attention to the game. But no, he always, in a good natured way, he always loved to, when I got stuff wrong on predictions, and he always used that as motivation and chip on his shoulder, but always in a good natured way. Like I said, there's few people I've rather enjoyed covering than David Bell, if any, because he was just such a great kid to cover. And there's no doubt. I remember even as a freshman in high school, the passes he could catch, just his hand-eye coordination was unbelievable. I mean, he didn't yet have that strength that he would get later, but anything you put in the vicinity, he would somehow come down with it. And you're like, how did he catch that? That was such a small window. How did he come away with it, this skinny freshman? So you could see even then that he had, and I remember Jason West and Marcus Clayton, the athletic director, they're talking about David Bell as a freshman, and even before anything started. And you always hear that, and you're kind of in one ear and out the other somewhat, but he proved it right away. You could tell how special he was. And, I see those catches he makes now in traffic, and it's just, and even the ones he doesn't catch, if it's a tip pass or something that's, looks like it's almost impossible to come up with, it's like he never gives up on a play. There's always some way he's going to pick it up off the turf or somehow make that play. I think a lot of it's just his hand-eye coordination is exceptional, and his competitive drive just to make every play is what separates him, in my mind, from almost anybody else I've ever covered before.
All right, Brian, I have time for one more, but fire away.
Kyle, just to switch gears real quick, this was an interesting year to be covering high school sports, I'd imagine. covering whether or not there's going to be a season. Obviously, there's no emotion whatsoever involved in that. I'm sure that you had to deal with a lot of school board machinations and, policy wonk type stuff, a lot of rescheduled games, a lot of canceled games. What was just the last year like, I guess for you personally, having to cover all this stuff? It's not what we signed up for.
No, it's not. And I've gone through different feelings, and at the very beginning, of all this, I had COVID, so and I ended up testing positive for the antibody. They weren't really testing us back then, but I had it in mid-March, right after that sectional, where a lot of people had it, and several people died from it who were there. So it hit home almost immediately how bad it was. And, now I wasn't like in the hospital or anything. I definitely didn't feel well. But so it kind of hit home immediate, how different it was, for me personally. And, I've gone through different, probably thoughts on what should be happening. And I've always tried to, just kind of focus on, what's happening in front of us. It became, I ended up writing about sectional 10 the next month, and, the story about sectional 10 kind of went all over, and it ran on a Saturday morning, online, and in Sunday's paper the next day. And all of a sudden it was picked up by, all kinds of people throughout the country, and really became, a pretty big story. But so from that standpoint, it kind of became a personal thing. But I've tried to keep it from being personal, and try to focus on what's actually happening, in front of us. And I always thought, I was communication with Paul Neidig from the IHSA, who took over, in the middle of all this stuff. Talk about a tough first year, but their idea always, I think, was to follow, what try to have a season, and probably turned out to be kind of what they thought it would be, where certain schools would have to shut down. But, I think that has probably turned out kind of like we thought it would. I am surprised, from a standpoint of actually covering the games, it was definitely getting out to football again. It was nice in my mind to get out and do that, and I'm glad the kids were able to do it. Basketball's felt somewhat normal, although the crowd's not being there for a game like LCLN was really weird, and I thought that was probably the first time where it's felt like, well, it doesn't feel right, doesn't, without there being the band and the fans here, and I've never covered a LNLC game where it hasn't been a sold out crowd, and so that was definitely different. But for me personally, it's been in my job, and yours probably too, Brian. I mean, you do work from home a lot, but I've definitely not being out as much, talking to people face to face. That's been a lot different. And when AAU came around and we had a chance to cover a little bit of that, it was nice to be back out and talk to some people. Even if we're wearing masks, at least you could be out covering stuff again. So I've gone through definitely a lot of different feelings, and still do, about what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. But I feel strongly that, I'm glad that the kids are able to do what they can do. My kids are also, they're middle school age, and they've been going to school and playing basketball for the most part, or other sports as well. And I'm glad they're able to do that. And I feel for those kids that can't, in other states. And, I'm sure it's, they're going through a lot with that. So, it's been weird. I can't wait until we, get through this at some point and kind of get back to some sense of what it used to be. I cannot wait for that. Hopefully by, next year we'll be there.
Say one last thing real quick.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Kyle, you should have won a Pulitzer for that story on the sectional. That was, honest to God, to embarrass the hell out of you here on live television. That was as good a piece of sports journalism as I think I've ever seen locally. Good job.
I appreciate you saying that. And I know, I was surprised. I thought it would do well here, and it would resonate with people, but I was honestly just shocked how kind of it took off virally, really. And I'm glad it did, because I think people probably learned from it in some aspects. So, and that's kind of the idea. You want to inform people. And I think hopefully that was able to in some way.
Yeah, in the most difficult of ways, it set the tone, and it had an impact in the state of Indiana and throughout the country, but an important impact as well. Is that this thing
Yes,
is serious
absolutely.
and very, very dangerous, and in its own way, that's you can't do anything more important than that, Kyle. That's for sure. So, hey, we want to thank both of you, and if you want to follow Kyle's work, and I highly recommend, if you like. He's as good as it gets, at Kyle Neddenriep, Neddenriep, all one word, on Twitter. And of course, Indianapolis Star work. Sometime you and I'll have a separate show about the old time Indiana State basketball, because I always love the fact that you can delve deep into that, and you're not an old guy like me, so that's a great thing. So we'll take a short break. We will come back with segment 3. Josh Helmholtz will join me from Rivals.com, talk some Purdue football recruiting as well, and we'll look forward to doing that. Kyle, have a great holiday, and Brian, we'll be talking to you before the end of the holidays, but thanks so much, and we'll look forward to our next segment and talking to you guys down the road on Gold and Black Live.